Welcome back to the Peace Offering Podcast. This is our final episode in the series leading up to Remineralize and Heal Your Gut Summit. And our last guest is really going to complete the picture of mineralization and gut health. And this is Dr. Elaine Ingham. This is going to come maybe out of left field, but it'll make sense when you get through it. Dr. Elaine is considered one of the world's foremost soil microbiologists. And she is trained over the last few decades, thousands of people in regenerating soil. She's also consulted farmers to regenerate their soil. And what that really means when we're talking about soil generation is the microbiology of the soil. And one of the reasons it's so dear to us at the Peace Offering, this subject, is because the human microbiome is very much an extension of the soil microbiome. And that is what we are talking about today, the soil microbiome, and looking at how these are similar, how these are different, and learning more about our guts from learning about the soil. I hope you enjoy this interview with Dr. Elaine Ingham. Yeah, I really was shocked, and not that you're new to this. I mean, you've been doing this soil microbiology work and remediation and regenerative soil work for decades. Um, and it's astounding to me that it can be. You're very well known in this arena, and but in the arena of health,
Yeah.
people have no idea that what you're doing and how crucial it is.
Yep. And especially when you're using your food intake, whatever you're eating, it's critical to have the maximum uh, nutrient that you possibly can and in the right form. A lot of people, they just don't understand that um, when you go into a place, an agricultural area that you're going to be growing plants and you want the maximum uptake of nutrients and have them balanced right and have them in the right form for the human being to benefit most from that. It's a far cry from what's in the soil, and even worse if you're dealing with dirt where you have no beneficial organisms doing the process of conversion for your plant.
Right.
So
And that and I think people think that this is it's like you either maximize yield or you maximize, health, or there's this sort of dichotomy. It's weird. It's like actually what you are showing everybody and have been showing for a while is that optimal for humans is optimal for the food web and optimal for every connecting ecosystem to it. It was designed that way. We're just kind of screwing it up. And I think that is a really fundamental sort of belief that people need to reorient to.
absolutely. Yeah, to understand that these organisms have been working for them since the dawn of life on this planet. The very first sets of bacteria or virus, some evidence for the truth in that, some evidence for not the way it happened, but that science will get there soon enough. But it's nature that developed all of these interactions to get the materials the plant needs so that those organisms that feed on the plant get all of the nutrients in the right form. And so we've got to teach all of that to people.
Can we start there? And
Sure.
and where what led me to you was speaking to a number of successful clinicians, health practitioners who get that the reason for, in large part, chronic disease really stems from a disruption in the food supply. Uh, and part of that disruption is malnutrition. And so then you kind of keep following that thread back to its origin, and you see that it's the soil that where this all starts, which is what led me to you. But the sentiment that I hear a lot that you corrected for me is that, you know, um, we have a lack of minerals in the soil, and and that we need to do soil remed like mineral remediation to the soil in order to get those minerals into the plants that get them into the animals that then get them into our bodies. Can we start there? And can you unpack that for us?
Bit by bit, how many hours do we have? Or
Yep.
how close, how detailed do you want me to get? So, yeah, when we're looking at the plant, human being about to have asparagus or have a salad or something like that, how do you know that the nutrients in that plant material are at maximum for human benefit? Is that the nutrient that you need to be consuming? And so you've got to look at the concept of diversity in human diet. Every time you take a bite of any kind of food, you're getting at least some nutrients, but they're probably going to be organic nutrients. They're not going to be inorganic. So we need to eat other organisms. So, step number one on the trip, what's the diversity of the different kinds of foods? And you would only have to alter that diet if you're sick. You're not getting the nutrients that you need to allow you to ward off those disease-causing organisms that are circulating in the air, in the water, in the gaseous, in the soil itself. There's some bad dudes in there that we need to select against. And watching what Mother Nature does will give us a good clue as to what the process is of dealing with the problem organisms that are somehow escaping and trying to get disease processes going. Well, there's a couple of things we can use as indicators of whether we really are dealing with a completely beneficial set of organisms versus those things that are not beneficial. So we don't want to have anaerobic conditions occurring in the soil when we're using that soil to gain the nutrients in our food, so that will remain healthy. We've got everything in our bag of tricks to ward off those disease causers or the parasites, things like that. So we need to go back along that pathway to, okay, now do we have the diversity of microorganisms that require an aerobic set of conditions in that soil? Which is not to say, and a lot of people get kind of confused on this point, and we get people who are negative about what we're talking about when they hit anaerobic fermentation. And that I'm saying to people that you can't have any of that kind of material because it's in an anaerobic environment. Well, if you are coming down with something, if you are sick, you have not had the nutrients that you need, sometimes that anaerobic fermentation is a quick fix for a short period of time, but it's not what you want to be doing all of the time. So, get the back into balance by perhaps getting a fermentative and something that functions by having alcohol in it and kills the disease causing or the problem organisms. And once you've gotten through that disease, now it's time to turn around and say, where am I not getting the nutrient that I need here? What's wrong with my diet? And so what are we going to do to fix that problem? And that takes you all the way into what's going on with the biology in your soil. Are the roots of your plants putting out exudates that nobody's there to get the message for what the plant needs? So the plant's out there, come on, guys, pay attention, wake up, what's going on? Why are you ignoring me? Well, if you ignore me, I'm going to ignore you. And that kind of, pettish childishness seems like it's a good story when you're trying to explain that to the general public. turn the microorganisms all along the way into characters in a cartoon system, something like that. And we've got to start writing books on using that kind of approach. So the plant has to be producing the nutrients, or excuse me, the indicators of what it needs. So the bacteria and fungi can volunteer to go ahead and move down to the closest inorganic forms of that nutrient, inorganic forms that the plant cannot take up. All of this nutrient cycling going on in the soil that I'm talking about here, the bacteria and the fungi, the protozoa, the nematodes, the microarthropods, the earthworms, all of those things interacting together to release the plant available form of those nutrients. And we've got to do it for all the different ones. I kind of take a look at the periodic chemistry world, all the different elements that should be or are present in the soil need to be converted using bacteria and fungi, protozoa, nematodes, earthworms, etc., so that when the plant needs those nutrients, all it has to do is say, hey guys, where are the nutrients? I want to know where they are, and all the cute little critters in the soil around the root system say over there, and the plant gets what it wants. It arrives at its doorstep, at the doorstep of that plant, and now the plant takes it up, kind of like a pizza delivery guy. You told the pizza department what the organism needed, and they happily deliver, and it sits on the front stoop until the plant needs it, and then into the body. So you can see where that interaction is really important, that you have all these different species of bacteria and fungi, protozoa, nematodes. The easiest place to go find that mix of these microorganisms, let's make it easy for us. Where do we find an already prepared mix of all of these different organisms that convert not plant available nutrients into plant available nutrients? So now your plant can get all it needs, and it won't be subject to the diseases and the pests and the problems. So this interaction has been going on for billions of years. When you look back to where the first bacterium was discovered, it's in a preserved form in the layers of compacted, well, it used to be soil until it got compacted down and turned into rock, solid rock. The nutrients are still there, but now we've got to make certain that we've got the whole food web doing the proper thing at the proper time. I know, is that enough
Yeah,
to
that's a
get people
great place to
started?
start. Yeah, so for I would say our listeners are not coming from a farming background, so some of these terms I think need to be converted into lay terms. So when you say exudates, from listening to your lectures, that is essentially like a signal. It's a food for the bacteria and fungi, but it also is there's a signal embedded in that food that is saying I need this nutrient, and that bacteria or fungi will go out and essentially mine that mineral from rock or from dirt, from silt or from clay or from other organic matter, and return it to the plant root system.
Yeah, the form of nutrient that the plant requires. And it won't take up something that is inorganic typically. It's got to have things in the right form, or they say, nope, I've only got so many spaces in here, and I don't have room for something I really can't use. So, yeah, I think we have to probably take a few moments here and define the difference between dirt and soil. So dirt is just the inorganic forms. You've got to have the microorganisms do their job on those inorganic forms of nutrients and convert them into something that a plant can utilize. Well, usually the bacteria and fungi are going a little overboard. They're going to convert more than the plant said, I've got to have 2 gallons per acre of this. And the bacteria and fungi, protozoa and nematodes are going to make a little bit higher. And so there's a little extra moving around within the rhizosphere where you've got a root of a plant coming through, and because it's putting out exudates, which are sugars and proteins and carbohydrates, all in their different conditions, bound one to another. And so there's a certain nutrients that these plants need, certain nutrients that these plants need, or what we're really talking about is not so much nutrient, but the form of the nutrient. This has to be a nitrogen bound to a carbon, bound to an OH group, bound to a hydrogen over on this side. And that's one kind of food resource that your plant needs and that the microorganisms will supply to that plant. Well, maybe that's not what's going to be best for this plant over here. And so the way the bacteria and fungi know what they're supposed to do is that exudate, that complex of sugars and proteins and amino acids, etc., is a message to the organisms in the soil that we want this form of organic nutrient delivered. We don't want that one because that selects for that plant to be happy and healthy. We want to be happy and healthy over here. And so you've got to some extent, I like to kind of sit back and say, Mother Nature can handle this quite well. I don't have to be in there doing the job of a chemist where I'm going a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and oops, I messed up, start over. Yeah, and we don't have to be doing that part of the work if we've got the microorganisms that your plant needs to do these changes for it and have the right nutrient at the right moment. And so soil is where we've got the inorganic forms. The dirt is the kind of the underlying basis. How much sand, silt, clay do you have? That's what determines what kind of dirt you're going to be working with. And that will vary dependent on what the plants are that are going to grow on this kind of mix of sand, silt, and clay. So now we've got 2 different systems where we've got the bacteria and fungi providing what the plant needs and what's going on in the dirt, the sand, silt, and clay, to select for certain species and not for others. So lots of selections going on in here.
Right.
So that's what soil is. And it varies for different kinds of plants. Most of us think about, we have to have so much organic matter. We have to have the right kind of organic matter for the plants to be healthy. And that's exactly true. Now, how do you make certain that you are pushing those nutrients to become available to your plant? Where's the place along this pathway that makes the microorganisms in the soil do what the plant requires? And that's where we had the root system coming, growing into your soil and putting out the information that the plant needs this. The bacteria and fungi go out and find that. They bring it back to the root system, but then the bacteria and the fungi have to be eaten by protozoa or nematodes or microarthropods or, the long list of predators in the soil, so that the nutrient is now released as an organic form into the soil and that plant can take it up. So all that information had to be gathered. So all of the nutrients, the food that your plant needs, is now out there in the soil, and the plant goes, yay. And when the plant has all the nutrients that it needs, it can turn on the disease resistance that that plant has gotten from Mother Nature. So go back the number of years that bacteria have been on this planet, 4.5 billion years. Bacteria have been around, all kinds of mutations and changes are going on as you go through evolution, as you go through succession in your systems. And we just want to make sure that the conditions are right for the plant you want to grow. And if something happens mid-season, and you can see that the sets of microorganisms are now all out of whack, this isn't right for my plant that I want, then you need to put those correct sets of microorganisms back into the soil. And so that's why we make compost, that we can have the right sets of microorganisms, proper balances based on what plant are you trying to grow. And, I'm sorry, but we haven't done that kind of work for every single kind of plant. The really common vegetables and herbs and orchard trees, blueberry bushes and stuff like that. Yeah, we have a pretty good idea of what those nutrients, that food is in the soil. But, someone comes in and says, I have this rare and endangered species of, fill in the blank. And all I can do is say, well, if you've got some of the soil around the root system of that plant, we could be doing some work on what the biology is that will be enhanced by putting that kind of food in there. And then we've got those microorganisms that you can put in a different row, different plants, wherever you want them, and those plants will thrive if you get the balances correct. But you can see why that might take a little while, because it's such a rich and complex system. So dirt, just to go over this again, dirt is basically the sand, the silt, the clay. It's all about texture. Because if you don't have any microorganisms, the only thing you can control then is the texture, the amount and type of the three different sizes, the sands, the silts, and the clays. And so that's really very difficult when all you have go fast, go slow. You're not allowing for the system to be very diversified. You're not going to have all the nutrients that you require. The plant's not going to have all of those nutrients. So we want to have lots of different kinds of things. And so diversity comes into this, where Mother Nature has, for the last 4.5 billion years, been working out the code of what sugar, what protein, what amino acid, what do you need in the structure of that food, of that organic matter. And as long as we have enough diversity and we're maintaining the conditions in an aerobic process, we should be able to control the system where you will be able to get the nutrients that you want by growing lettuce or growing carrots or growing tomatoes in your agricultural areas. It's one of the problems of going to a grocery store where you see all kinds of different tomatoes and all kinds of different vegetables, but how good are they? Do they really contain all of the nutrients? And that's why there are people out there working on how do we measure these things. And so if you squeeze the sap out of just a small length of the plant that you want to know about, does it have all of the nutrients that it needs? You can have a plant analysis, a plant sap analysis done, and that's going to give us pretty good information about whether your plant is getting all the nutrients that it needs. Or what I find much more easy is to look at what are the bacteria and the fungi, protozoa and nematodes present in your soil. What is the balance? And if you've got the balance right, and you've been managing, so it's always aerobic, the organisms always have the food that they need, um, Mother Nature is going to fix the system so that you don't have to get in there with the minutia. How many, of this particular bacterial species do I have? How many of the second one? How much of the third one? And especially when other people are doing DNA analysis and working on this question of how many species of bacteria are there in the soil. And some of the numbers that are coming back in terms of diversity, not numbers of those organisms, but how many different species of bacteria and fungi and protozoa, etc., how many are present in the soil. And it can be well over 10,000 species of bacteria in a gram of soil, like a, yeah, a gram of soil. So that this gram of soil here is different from the bacterial species are different in the next, right next to it, in the soil right next to it. And then that's different from, until you've got that whole 10,000, now you start seeing places where there's no new microorganisms being put into the system. Well, then you got to do that for fungi, and you got to do that for protozoa and nematodes and microarthropods. So how about we just let Mother Nature take part by running that system for you, and all you have to do is make certain that you're going through the process of succession to reach the place that you want to now stop succession from happening, so that your potatoes or your, whatever you want to eat will have all the nutrients in it that your plant requires.
When you say nutrients for plants, are you referring only to minerals, or are there other substances that these plant roots are taking up in addition to minerals?
Yeah, we want organic matter. So that diversity of sugars, proteins, carbohydrates, um, all the different kinds of foods. So that general grouping of foods in the balance of which kinds are you seeing? Is there enough nitrogen in this soil for nutrient cycling to happen? And if you've got good nutrient management, you've got all of the organisms that will keep that nitrogen in their bodies instead of spitting it out and letting that wash out and end up being a problem downstream for somebody else. Um, that nitrogen can cycle over and over and over again for, we don't know, but for a very long time, it could be present in that soil. Most people think of soil as maybe going down no more than 3 inches. Well, maybe if you're a weed, that's perfectly fine, because you do have to go through that weed stage of life, but let's make it as short as possible, like about a day or two. And then we've moved on to the next successional stage. And if that's what the plant is that you want to grow, then you make certain that it stays at those balances. And so, you know, it's a good thing Mother Nature had 4.5 billion years to get the bacterial community figured out for all these different plant species. Well, same thing for fungi. Fungi have been around on this planet for 3.5 billion years. Protozoa for a little bit less time. Nematodes just go through the all the different kinds of critters. The longer they've been on this planet working, yeah, it's the more important those organisms come for the different kinds of trees and shrubs and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Fascinating. Well, that I mean, I'm not a biologist, but it's what I'm hearing you say is that photosynthesis is only providing a certain amount of sugars and carbohydrates and proteins for the plant. It's the rest of it. It's picking up from these microbes in the soil. So it really is it's a dual process
Yep.
for that plant to grow.
Yeah.
So let me
Photosynthesis. So
go ahead.
photosynthesis is that's the energy generating. And how is energy stored in the soil system? It's stored as sugars, as proteins, as amino acids, as all of those component. And then you also now add in the nutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, magnesium, calcium, sodium, potassium, iron, zinc, all of them. Um, it people often get surprised by the fact that probably every nutrient in the periodic chart of chemicals has to be present in some amount in your soil. You may think that arsenic is a terrible it would be a horrible thing to consume because it would kill you, right? Arsenic is bad stuff. You don't want to eat it. Well, you have to have enough. And
It's the
once you've
dose
got
makes the
enough,
poison.
yeah, there's the threshold. You've got to have that much if you really want good, healthy production. But it doesn't take much, as you were just saying, it doesn't take much to reach that goal. So how do you keep that in balance with the nitrate that you need or the ammonium that you need, depending on whether you're trying to grow a bacterial dominated plant or a fungal dominated plant?
Okay, so one of my interests and a lot of the practitioners and that I'm connected to are interested in the minerals that are involved in mitochondrial respiration, which most people see as sort of the foundation of human health and all the other systems built on top of that. And when it comes to minerals, some of the minerals that tend to be depleted in people are magnesium, copper, selenium, and so the thinking is that, well, it's not in the food supply. I mean, I'm sure there are some deranged mineral dynamics going on in people, which is part of the issue, could be a large part of the issue. But if it's not in the food supply, I think the general thought is that it's because the minerals don't exist in the soil in which those plants are growing. And is that true?
That's
Or is it
probably not true.
okay?
Those nutrients are present in the sand, the silt, the clay, the rocks, the pebbles, etc. So how do you get the nutrients out of that? You've got to have bacteria and fungi making the right kinds of acids and pulling all of those nutrients out. And so one of the things that when your plant says, "Hey guys, I need a little bit more of this kind of nutrient," they go over to the sand, silt, clay, rocks, and pebbles. The bacteria and the fungi go over to the uh, rocks and pebbles and sand, silt, and clay, and they pull the nutrients being required by the plant. Their enzymes pull those nutrients out, store those nutrients in the body of the bacterium or fungus. The bacteria, fungus need a little bit of that stuff, but they're overproducing because basically their source of food has said to them, go out and find these nutrients. And if you don't find them, don't come back. And I'm not paying for something that it's just think of it as the market, down the street. You've got to have the farmers bringing the stuff in. The market person takes over and now sells that to the surrounding root systems that are saying, feed me, feed me, feed me. So it very much is kind of a pizza parlor way to think of how all of this is going on. So the nutrients are present in the rock, in the pebbles. It's very unusual to find rocks that have nothing of a certain particular mineral. If it's there are a few things that are just kind of they make structure available, and so those nutrients might not be taken up much by the plant. So it doesn't, kind of like arsenic, it doesn't need that much really, but you've got to have a little bit. So getting all of those balances of things is a full-time job for the plants. What do I need? And, I'm only going to go and put out, dangle the really good amino acid for this bacterium or that fungus or whatever. And then when the bacteria and fungi then are in the root system, kind of waiting their turn at the counter to sell this to the person who owns the grocery store, um, as they're sitting there waiting, the protozoa and the nematodes, the predators of the bacteria and fungi, will come along and chow down on those bacteria and fungi, releasing the nutrients the plant wants and needs in an organic form. There's where the conversion from inorganic dirt, now we're inside the microorganism, and it releases the organic forms of those nutrients for your plant. But then we need protozoa, nematodes, microarthropods, earthworms, etc.
One of the things that has gotten me so interested in this is, you mentioned this before, that the way that energy is stored in the form of carbohydrate, stored in the form of protein, mostly carbohydrate, but there's protein and structure and fats as well. It's all built on carbon.
Mhm.
And that that's a very, very timely topic in consideration of the carbon dioxide and the carbon cycle in general, and that we use that carbon. Humans use that carbon to run the mitochondrial respiration system, which provides the energy for the body, and so do these microbes, and so do the plants. And what's so interesting, as the CO2 increases in the atmosphere, is that the where I kind of arrived to this conclusion before finding you. It's like, okay, well, all right, let's take out some of the program narratives that are being they're being kind of we're being pummeled with, and I just want to look at the carbon cycle itself, and go, all right, well, where is the bottleneck in that cycle? And for me, that bottleneck seems to be in the disruption of the topsoil. And and much of the work, and you even have an animation on the carbon cycle as part of your YouTube channel. By the way, plug for your YouTube channel. It's phenomenal. There is so much information on there for listeners that just want to go deep on this stuff. She has multiple master classes and workshops and short video, like just an immense amount of information on there. But that bottleneck in that topsoil that seems to me to be the place to fix it. And in large part, your work is doing that, because when you do restore that microbiology, you are restoring that, you're opening up that bottleneck. So now carbon can cycle better. I know it's only a piece of health for all these organisms and plants, but it's a timely topic. And so what my question for you is, like, how did it get so disrupted? What
Yeah,
what
it's
is
called
what's
tillage. When when you think about how deep down into the soil roots of a tree can go, when you actually put a dye into the upper part of the plant and you follow where that dye goes, it will go down as deep as the root system of that plant can go down. And we have pictures of plants that have root systems like a conifer, Douglas fir, the old growth plants have root systems that go down 250 feet deep into the soil. And if you're getting your nutrients all the way down here, there's no problem. Yeah, that plant's gonna have all the nutrients it needs whenever it needs it. And there is a constant movement up. And there was a hemlock that we found that had a root system that went down 300 feet. So the problem comes when we start destroying that biology in the top 3 inches. Come in with the tilling equipment, which is basically just, it's like a lawnmower, but you're going to set the wheels down a little bit further so that you actually mix in all of that sand, silt, clay, rocks, pebbles, etc., so that you get a mixture. Well, when you do that mixture, you just sliced and diced and crushed and destroyed the microorganisms in that soil. So you lost 50% of the bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, microarthropods that we need. So what's that going to do to your fertility, your ability to grow a good, healthy plant? You can't do it, especially when you start thinking about green revolution. You were supposed to come into your agricultural fields very early in the spring and do tillage. Sliced and diced and crushed, 50% of the population is gone. Well, 2 weeks later, you're supposed, as all of those weeds start to grow, because you've made it a perfect habitat for the weed plants in your area. So all those weeds are starting to grow. So what do you do to get rid of them? You till again. Well, you just wiped out 50% of the remaining 50%. So here we are down at 25%. So we're destroying even more rapidly those organisms that would set things straight. So we've got to put these organisms back into the soil, and then never again do you till. There's no reason to till if you've got the right biology present in that soil.
So if someone's dropping a seed in the ground, they're just they're just, basically pushing it down into the ground and that's it.
Yep. Yeah, it's dirt. They're trying to grow plants using dirt, and there are lots of diseases, lots of problems, lots of competition with the weeds, and yeah, not a good place. So the Green Revolution is, just the opposite of what all of the brouhaha about, oh, this is how we can grow lots and lots of food for lots and lots of people. Well, you're crunching down on carbon, but you're not getting the nutrients with it. And so people can be eating a massive quantity, but they're still malnourished because the nutrients are not present in that plant material. So we've got to make sure that we're getting the right kinds of organisms, the right kind of, well, and you've been talking about mitochondria as being a really special hotspot within the plant material. Well, mitochondria are descended from bacteria that moved inside that plant cell, and the mitochondria is just kind of a fast way in the cafeteria to grab all the things that you want. And now the mitochondria put it all together and ship it out to where it needs to be in the plant. And so it's just a better way, faster way of making the foods that your plant requires. So, yep, mitochondria. We wouldn't have human beings if we didn't have mitochondria, but we wouldn't have human beings if we didn't have the original nucleus. So, who's more important? They're
Hmm.
all important. We can't forget any part.
Hmm. Yeah. I think I heard you say once in one of your lectures that the pH, and correct me if I'm wrong, the pH of the soil is determined by the microbes in the soil and not necessarily by the substrate or the minerals in the soil. Is that accurate?
Yep. Yeah. When you're in the dirt and you're looking at what is the pH in that dirt, it's pretty consistent. It doesn't change very rapidly, which is, that for me, that's kind of, well, this is a measurement of something that lags behind what we really want to know. We want to know what's happening with the pH today, right now. Should I have to be coming back in here and putting down another application of the organisms in the form of compost or compost extract or compost tea? so I can get instant change of the pH value in that soil, because now it's soil. And now you can alter that pH in that soil by altering the organisms in your compost, the organisms in your compost teas, and get that change. So it's not really kind of a mindless act that this dirt is going to have a certain pH. Nope, it's what are we doing with the organic materials that we're putting in and the diversity of those organisms? Have we matched what that plant requires?
Are your so the primary way, as I understand it, that you remediate soil or regenerate soil is with compost tea, at least in large, like if you're going to be in a large scale farm,
It
is that
depends. The compost tea is something we would use above ground to get the organisms on those leaf surfaces, on the flowers, on the seeds as they're being produced. So everything has really good biology over the whole entire surface. That's another way of assuring that your plant is not capable of being a host for those diseases and those pests and those problems. So two slightly different uses of the organic carbon or the organic material that's being produced. So yeah.
well, it's that is quite similar to how microbes work on the surfaces of the human body as well, which is so interesting. And so this is one of the things I'd like you to maybe provide an analogy for. It's pretty clear that we have microbiology all over our skin, um, from the nose down through the lungs, the mouth down through the anus, the urogenital tract, basically all the surfaces.
Mhm.
But on the human body, for example, the skin is an entirely predominantly aerobic environment, whereas something like the colon, where the most amount of microbes exist in the human body, is predominantly anaerobic. And so and then there's areas that are gradients, that are like decreasingly aerobic environments down to anaerobic. And so each one of these environments provides a ground for different types of microbes, as what you were talking about in the soil. Um, are there contexts in soil that you would want an anaerobic environment?
In order to get some of the nutrients, foods that the plant, that the organism wants and needs. The fastest way to produce a large quantity is to have the environment go anaerobic for a short period of time. You don't want it to last too long. So think of the time that you move organic material that you're eating moves into the stomach and then into the small intestine, into the large intestine. 24-hour residence is really what you want. And so the small intestine and the large intestine, they're have pockets of anaerobic organisms that when that food comes moving along that channel, um, the anaerobic conditions are there already, and they alter the system so that a lot of the material that the plant requires in that form is being made. And now as you move the next little bit down the intestines, those nutrients that the plant needs that come more rapidly when they're doing slightly anaerobic. So now it means you've got to understand what are the layers of anaerobic conditions. So some of those materials you want not very anaerobic. So instead of being a 6 parts per million, you're at a 5.5 parts per million oxygen instead of 6. Well, then some other kinds of materials during different parts of the year, you got to think about the life cycle of that plant. It doesn't need just one kind of food, it needs all of them. And different times of the year when that plant is going into hibernation, basically, going to go to sleep for the winter time. There's where you have to have a lot of anaerobic things happening, because you don't want anything else using those particles as food during that wintertime period. So there's a lot of really interesting changes, most of which I'm like, you guys figure this out. And when you've got it figured out, we'll have an explanation that will be good for people to understand. It's just such a complex system. It's
So,
it's
so,
amazing.
so are
Yeah.
you saying that in this in the growing soil, is not the compost, but in the soil that these plants are growing in, that the aerobic conditions change seasonally?
Mhm.
Um,
Yep. And in just certain parts. So there's whenever they're doing an anaerobic situation, it's how far down does that parts per million of oxygen, how low can that go before you're starting to do harm to that organism. So you think about a single bacterium, lots of different things going on inside that bacterium, but you really don't ever want that to drop below an oxygen concentration of, say, 4.5. You start getting below that, you are setting the stage to grow diseases. If even one disease organism got into that situation, it could well be the death of that particular cell. But when it dies, it was in an anaerobic condition, all the rest of the cells now are going to be focused on getting rid of that problem, or that organism is going to die from a disease. And, we call it smallpox, or we call it whatever toxic disease you're talking about. We have names for them all, and you've just got to get rid of the conditions that set the stage for anaerobic, to getting too anaerobic.
Got it. Do you have health practitioners, people in the health space reaching out to you to use your understanding of soil as a mirror for what might be happening in the human body and restoring health?
We don't, people haven't made it, that kind of getting the organisms, microorganisms with cells of the body. That people haven't really gotten there yet. Um, it's like we'd like to have the time to put together all of our understanding of this, and then let's have a good, um, soil summit, or nutrient summit sometime in the future that would energize the push to start understanding these two giant parts of our lives. Right now, they're very separated. And it kind of does, well, consider the fact that we're still arguing about different modes of growing plants. And there are people out there who think the root systems of plants only go down 3 inches, and it's not possible for it to go deeper than that. I like to come along with my little shovel and dig down 4 or 5 feet and say, so what is this right here? It's a root. So is this aerobic enough here to promote the beneficial organisms? Absolutely. There's nothing stinking. There's nothing smelling. So how far down can roots go? Well, some corn, for example, doesn't typically go deeper than maybe 12 to 15 feet. But then you have the example of old growth trees that have their roots down as deep as 450 feet. So we
Wow.
need to integrate all of this. And so people who are really into that, into integration, they're one of the waves into the future that we have to promote. We have a couple of students who have sent in their PhD work for me to review, and amazing. They're putting all of the parts of the system together in a way that we could very easily follow the form of carbon inside these cells, and how is it different if bacterial species 1, bacterial species 2, 3, all 10,000 of them, could we really start understanding human metabolism, metabolism of most mammals, of fish, of all the different things. And yeah, we can do it. We're really starting to understand those things. I think of when I was a graduate student first starting to do these my experiments, bacteria and fungi, what do they do in soil? After having been told that bacteria and fungi don't do anything in the soil, they're just there. Right. Um, Mother Nature is using up all that energy to keep all of those species of bacteria and fungi, etc. And she's not doing it just for the laughs or because aren't the bacterial cells, aren't they so cute? Just like a little baby. She's doing it because we have to have all of those organisms in order to have a properly cycling system. We've got to put the carbon in our atmosphere back into the soil from whence it came. It's because we're out there destroying the soil and then trying to grow plants on something where the only way you can get nutrients into that plant is to put in amounts of those inorganic nutrients so much higher than what you would have to do if you were working with nature. So of course we're going to have leaching. Of course we're going to have destruction of all of the rivers and lakes and streams, everything downstream from any of those farms still putting out inorganic fertilizer. They're killing all of the rest of it. Well, but we got to eat. But how long is it going to take for the governmental bodies to start realizing that they need to put most of that carbon back into the soil? You kill the fungi, you kill the bacteria. Those are the two most important. There's more nutrient, there's more carbon tied up in those two sets of organisms than any other. So you want to talk about getting the job done as fast as possible. We need to have the organisms in the soil, and it's got to be soil.
What a great way to end. Thank you so much, Dr. Elaine. Tell everyone how they can learn more and some of your offerings at the Soil Food Web School.
Um, we have a system where we're trying to train people. So one-on-one with people who have been doing this work for a number of years, where they go out and they measure the biology in the dirt. And especially if you've got problems with weeds or you've got a problem with getting good fertility, you can't get enough nutrients into the plants. We know then that you're on a strictly chemical approach to doing things. We've got to get you out of that, killing Mother Nature is the way you do things. We've got to get you understanding that it's the work that nature and these organisms do together that we need to be doing, and we need to understand how this works. Well, if we want to keep having human beings on this planet, I do tease people every once in a while by saying, well, what do we need human beings for? They just cause problems. So let's go ahead. Let's all of the carbon up the temperature on the land and see what organism survives and comes out. In another 100 million years, we will be able to see that the next set of organisms. Dinosaurs are really huge and large because of the way the carbon in the system worked. You wipe out the dinosaurs, and now you've got human beings, mammals coming up, and we're happily destroying that which supported us. So now what's going to be happening? What are the organisms that would come up in another 100 million years? It's kind of interesting, but it's woeful because we're losing. And it's going to be very unfun for the last human beings on this planet if that's the way we choose to go. And it's a choice. So, where was I going with this? I've lost my thread.
Soil Food Web School, and you're doing some consulting.
Yep. So we consult with people. We have consultants that have been all the way through the process of adding in figuring out what biology you have, what needs to be fixed, put back into the system so that you can start getting all of the benefits, that you don't have to use inorganic fertilizers. You don't need pesticides. You don't need to have any of those toxic chemicals. Exit them from your life and you will right there be healthier. We've got all of this information on different ecosystems, different parts of the world. We have consultants in every country on the planet except for some of the those places on the planet where human beings are in conflict with each other. Can't send people in there, despite the fact that that's where they need us most to grow their own food. So hopefully that will come to a better solution. We have lots of opportunities for you to join us in our foundation classes. We have webinars. We work with people. We can, if you don't want to be doing the microscope assessments, you're just not that good with microscope, don't want to do that. We have people who are trained to do that. And so it's a fairly, well, I think it's an extremely reasonable price tag for having somebody else do that work and then discuss with a consultant what those numbers mean. What do you need to do so you will reach the goal that we've set of being the most contain the highest amounts of these nutrients and get those the plants growing very rapidly so that you're getting the root system going down so you never have erosion. You will never have leaching loss from your soil. The soil, all those nutrients are held in your soil. They don't get lost. They don't exit the system. And water stays in the system. So a whole set of things that need to be done so that you don't irrigate anymore. This last couple of summers that have been really hot and dry in Europe and Africa, South Africa, South America as well. And we've been showing them how to get structure back into the soil that will hold the water so they don't have to irrigate anymore. When you can grow a crop of grapes without irrigating at all through one of the driest summers they've ever seen, what can you say? I think we've got to turn all of our agriculture in that direction because we just don't have clean water to spare. And that's all through our own stupidity over time. So let's reverse course. Let's get it done. And we have typically have a soil summit every year. This year it'll probably be a little bit delayed, but we like some suggestions on what are the topics that you would like to hear us bring in people and talk about what they're doing in India or Sri Lanka or it's like they actually are green growing plants in the Antarctic. Well, because of climate change, we've got large areas that are growing, very early successional plant species, but they're there. So we now need to have people have consultants for Antarctica.
Wow.
Otherwise,
Wow.
probably the only place we don't really have anybody there permanently living there is in Greenland. So if you're in Greenland, you should be around the towns and work out how to help them grow the plants so that they can be healthy. Yeah, and typically you have to do it in greenhouses of some sort, and making sure nothing freezes in that winter time period is a challenge, but it's doable. So come visit us at Soil Food Web School. That's where we do the interactions with students, train people to be able to go out and help others learn how to do this in as short a period of time. Typically, if we get things going right, we can see an end to all the problems that you've got in by the middle of the first year that
Mm.
you are turning to this approach. If you don't quite believe what we're saying and you don't shift things along in the proper sequence, it could take you a year or two to get that conversion to happen. It just, how much do you trust your microorganisms? So trusting nature, or why not take a small area in your, one windrow, windrow is for the compost, in the row for the plants. Pick out a certain amount of that area and apply the biology there. And don't apply the biology to something that is, you're looking at inorganic fertilizers and pesticides and stuff, and compare what's the dollar sign, what's the yield. We always get increases in yield if you're starting out from dirt and trying to convert to soil. We always get increases in yield. We have again grape. Well, oh no, tobacco. Ronald is working on tobacco now, and he's showing huge increases in the in the yeah, in the tobacco. Not my favorite crop, but it makes a good point. He's done the same with grapes. He's done the same thing with all kinds of vegetable garden varieties of plants that we can increase some with someone like Ronald, who's really got the system worked out for Spain, for areas in Europe. Um, he can get yields that are upwards of 1,000%. So when somebody says you can't grow a lot of plants using a biological approach or using organic approach, I just always invite them to come work with us. They can take care of the toxic chemical part of the farm. We'll take care of the biological, the soil food web part of the farm. And we always end up making people eat their words.
Amazing. Well, I wish you and your organization the highest success, because I think you are really doing crucial work right now. And thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, and we'd love to interact with your community and whatever way we can help them understand the soil food web, showing other people, showing the folks in your own organization that might be a little, this sounds too good to be true. Um, well, it's because it's too horrific what we've been doing to our soils. That it works this well. So love to work with you, your folks, have you help us bring this information to everybody on the planet as fast as
Wonderful.
possible.